Hi Pop Tarts! Okay, so the first thing I want to do tonight before I start talking about the topic that I've chosen is just to say a big thank you to everybody who supported me since I opened up this channel and since I started opening up a little bit of my life and my experiences with tarot and ideas that I have about the cards and stuff. I've been receiving emails lately, just people telling me that they like what I'm doing, that they appreciate the channel, or they've learned something from one of my videos, which is amazing. And the video responses that people have made, the comments people have left underneath my channel, the people that have subscribed, all of this means a lot to me, and particularly people lately who've been complimenting me on the blog or letting me know that they read the blog and they get something out of it. That means so much to me because the blog was really the original brainchild long before I thought it might be a good idea to do videos. The blog was the primary way in which I was going to allow the ideas that I have about tarot to grow and amass and accumulate and be stored somewhere online. So the blog is really my little baby and I love it, and if you do like what I have to say about tarot or you get anything out of it at all and you want more, then I would definitely go over to the blog if you haven't already, because I've almost finished my definitions of all of the cards now. I've made my way through the Major Arcana and the Suit of Cups, and I'm getting to the end of the rest of the suits as well, so you will have a foundation basis with regard to what I think of each individual card. On top of that, there's lots and lots of articles about techniques and tips and theories and different ways that I look at tarot, and different ways that cards can be combined, spreads, ideas for readings, that kind of thing. So lately, for example, I've been blogging loads. I've got a blog on there called Further Down the Road blog post, which is about my journey with tarot and where I feel it's going now. And there's one called A Beginner's Guide to Surfing at the moment, which is an analysis of the Death card and kind of how it pertains metaphorically to the idea of learning how to surf. So it's a bit quirky, the blog, but I love it. Like I said, it's my little baby. Okay, so moving on from that, I've been asked a couple of times lately. I've had 2 emails from 2 different people, and also my friend asked me during our lunch break today whether or not you can really read tarot for yourself, whether or not you can read your own tarot cards. And my friend said that she's heard from a few people that it's bad luck to read your own cards. Well, luck is a matter of definition, really. So I mean, from my point of view, I would say that it is not bad luck to read your own tarot cards, but you may have a few issues with accuracy, and I think that's kind of where the idea comes from, that it's not a good idea to read your own cards. It's very difficult to be objective and to remain objective when the thing that you are delving into so intimately and so in depth is your own life and the situation you find yourself in. So when you sit down to read your own tarot cards and you are analysing a certain situation or really sort of getting into a specific thing that's happening to you or that you're going through, it can be very difficult to step back and allow the messages of tarot to permeate and to translate without your hand in it, kind of thing. It's really difficult. It's very different, obviously, to reading tarot for a stranger or reading tarot for a paying client, where you feel that your objectivity can really lend itself to the reading and your objectivity is evidently what that client wants from you. Whereas when you read tarot for yourself, you may be wanting a certain answer to come out of it. You're looking for a certain thing. You may be looking to have something validated. Perhaps you want to tell yourself that you're definitely right about the situation. You might be keen to see the cards in a certain way or decide that they mean a certain thing and not really take enough from it to have it be beneficial, because of course when you use tarot for self-development, it's mostly all about giving yourself different ideas, considering different avenues, considering what you may not have considered. It's basically about changing up the pathway or trying to work out and define if you're on the right pathway by trying to work out what other pathways are open to you and what you could do and what would happen if you did do this. It's thinking in the subjunctive largely. So when you do your own tarot cards and it's pertaining to a situation that really means something to you and is really personal to you, it's difficult to allow for that objectivity, and it's difficult also to allow for a little bit of criticism or a little bit of challenge from the cards. So all of those messages that could be really useful for you could be in there, but you might want to whitewash over them and instead decide that, oh yes, the Lover's card, that means we're going to get together and live happily ever after no matter what his wife says. That kind of thing, you know, you can really decide for yourself, and that's the difficulty when left to your own devices. Are you really your own best counsellor, or are you just kind of deciding that it's going to be happily ever after and that there's no work you need to do? So it can be difficult really to allow tarot to do its proper job with self-development when you read your own cards. But I think that's why there are so many awesome techniques in place for people who want to read for themselves, to get them thinking outside the lines and to make sure that they don't become stale and stagnant in their practice when they're reading for themselves. It can be very, very easy to become self-congratulatory or self-involved to the point where you're not allowing tarot to stick its oar in and you're not allowing tarot to shake things up for you. Instead, you're just using it to confirm, that you are right already, or that you don't need to do anything and it's all everybody else's fault. So there are some good techniques to get you thinking outside of those lines and allowing tarot to open up a line of communication with you so that you can really see the cards as a very powerful tool, and that by the time you've finished a reading for yourself, you've gotten into that meditative, contemplative state where you are allowing messages to come to you and you're allowing challenges to come into your life, and by the end of the reading you feel completely refreshed, revitalized. You feel like you've really realized or recognized something about yourself, and that's where the good stuff comes with tarot, and that's what we need to allow for. So let's think about some ways when we're reading our own cards that we can get enough meat off the bone that we've actually learned something or reassessed something, and we're not just sitting in our own sort of tired juices, just kind of self-satisfied or self-served by the cards in front of us, but not really learning anything, not really getting anything out of it. The first technique that I would recommend to you is called linear technique, and it was actually invented by Toni Gilbert, and she speaks about it in her book about tarot and the archetypes, and I love this idea. I think it's great, and it works really well for people that have no idea what the tarot cards mean and have like no idea what the definitions are, but also for very seasoned practitioners who've been playing with their deck for years and years. What she suggests is that you go through the deck face up, and you pick out all the cards that you like and all of the cards that you dislike, and then cards that you feel neutral towards. So you're going through the deck. It can be in any order, it can just be as it comes, and as you're going through, consider with each individual card whether or not you have a good feeling about that card, negative feeling, or neutral basically, and then make the cards into 3 piles. Then go through the 2 piles that you like and dislike and take out the ones that you really like and the ones that you really pretty much detest. Take out any that make you feel very uncomfortable or very pent up or very tense, or the ones you've never really connected to properly. And then take out the ones that you absolutely adore, that when they come up you just love them, they give you a really great feeling. Either the picture is meaningful to you, or as a seasoned practitioner you just love the meaning of the card, you love everything it invokes for you. Once you've selected some cards that you feel very passionate about one way or the other, do your reading based off of those responses and based off of those results, and see where that leads you, and see where the questions that brings up can take you to. Because 9 times out of 10, when we do a reading for ourselves or for anybody else, the cards are going to be picked at random. It doesn't matter how you feel that we get to that choice, whether we get to it through intuition of what's there, whether we get to it through blind faith or luck or chance, or whether we get to it because it's what fate has in store for us. We did mean to pick that card. 9 times out of 10, all the cards are face down. We have no idea what we're going to pick. We just don't know. So linear technique gives us a great opportunity to actually consider which cards ought to be in our reading based off of our very strong responses to them, and do the reading that way. So it's very different, it's very outside the lines. And if you're doing a reading for yourself one day and you really feel that it's a particularly passionate topic, then do linear technique with that question or focus area in mind perhaps. If you're thinking about the breakdown of a particularly close friendship and you want to do a reading to kind of clarify some things for yourself or work through these things, then do linear technique based on that. Perhaps the cards that you really dislike or feel really tense towards are the cards that pertain to your friend and the way they've treated you, or the breakdown of the friendship in general. And then maybe the cards that you feel really good about are the cards that are nostalgic or sentimental, that make you think about what the friendship was in the past perhaps, or something like that. Analyze the cards based on what you consciously choose, not based on blind choice but based on conscious choice. So this is a good idea. Free association is another great idea which helps you to actually dissect and analyse the card much more close up than you would do just sort of looking at it overall. So say you draw some cards at random and you turn them over, and you can see, you know, that it's the Hierophant and it's the Star and it's the Wheel of Fortune, whatever it is, and you kind of read that for an overview. Then try and go into each card, because I think particularly when we know the definitions of the cards, it can be really easy to get stuck with that definition and to decide immediately that, you know, when you see the Wheel of Fortune, it means that chance is going to have its wicked way with you, or, you know, whatever you read way back when that became your standard definition. We don't shake things up enough, particularly not when we know a lot about tarot, we're comfortable with the definitions and such. So what I would suggest is sit there with a card that you've actually drawn for your reading and break the symbols down inside. You know, if you see a demon in the card and a cup in the card, maybe some hearts in the card, maybe there's a castle there, take all of these different symbols, take all of the different elements in the card, if there's some sea in the card maybe, you know, whatever it is, write down lists of all the things in the card that jump out at you, all the objects that are there, the creatures that are there, the figures, what are the figures holding, what tools are there, you know, what accessories are happening in the card. Once you've broken down the illustration into a bunch of objects and people and, you know, animal, vegetable, mineral, then do free association based on each thing. So maybe the first object in the card was a sword. Start with free association. You know, it could go with weapon, and then war, and then passion, and then love, you know, free association. So we're keeping it rolling. We're taking the initial symbol, we're taking that initial concept, and then we are moving that as far away from its original context as possible. This is what's going to help us get beneath the card, beneath that surface veneer of the illustration, which we're either very, very used to, or if we're very new to reading tarot for ourselves, we're not used to it. So we're kind of taking it at face value and taking it as a whole image. Instead of doing that, let's break it down. Let's give every single thing in that card its little piece of sunlight, so that we can really see how far back we can peel those layers and see exactly what the image of a sword or the image of a demon or whatever actually means to us in the subconscious. So we're peeling back the layers. Let's say, for example, that we know that we all have a persona, our public guise, the guise that we know we have. Beneath that we have the ego, and that's the way we see ourselves, and we're not always aware when the ego is in the driver's seat because it's the way we see ourselves. So persona first, ego next, and then behind the ego we have the subconscious. This is true for ourselves, but let's imagine it's true for a tarot card too. Let's imagine that a tarot card, as a whole picture with a definition and a name, is the persona. That's its public face. Behind the persona is what we feel about the card, what the card's trying to portray, the energy it gives off, the energy, the accepted energy that most tarot readers would feel, for example, the Death card pertains to. That's its ego, that's the way the card sees itself and translates itself. What we want to do with regard to free association is we want to peel back both of those layers. We want to get right down into the card's subconscious and see what it's really saying, see what's really going on there. So that's a good technique when you're reading for yourself. Dialogue is good too, and I'm going to go into this a little bit more when I talk about ways to study the cards through intuition rather than through books, because I do think that both techniques are equally important, and I've been sent an email asking about this too, about whether or not we should study the cards intuitively or through books. So I'm going to go into that a little bit more in another video, but for now let me just say that I think it is a great technique when you see a figure in a tarot card to sit down opposite that card and imagine having a little bit of dialogue with that figure. For example, if it's the King of Pentacles, who is this guy? What is he like? What are his attributes? What are his flaws? How would he talk to you? How would he perceive you? How would you perceive him? Have a relationship with the figures in the tarot cards and see where that leads you to as well, because that can be another way of analysing and breaking down the card in a way that's not quite so organic, not quite so free-flowing, and can make us peel back the layers and think a little bit more before we sort of decide out of hand, oh, that's what that card means, you know. So we're complicating it for ourselves a little bit, and that is what allows us to get to the meat on that bone kind of thing. Drawing and writing with tarot, these are two techniques that I sometimes encourage querents to go for when they have a deck of cards. So drawing with tarot is kind of like, you know, sand play. in psychotherapy. It's basically where there's a sand tray and the therapist has various different objects in the sand tray, like little trinkets and symbols and bells and whistles and toys, that kind of thing. And they pass the sand tray to the patient and they ask the patient to build a scene out of the various different objects in the sand tray to explain what's going on, to explain what's happening in their mind, or to explain what's happening in the family unit, or whatever it is. I feel that asking a querent to draw with tarot is like sand play. So basically, ask yourself a question, ask yourself to portray a scene. So for example, if you're doing a reading about issues you're having with your partner, take the tarot deck face up so you can see all the images, and use the deck to paint a picture of how you feel, or paint a picture of what's going on. This can be very complex, so you might need to break it down a little bit. For example, show me in tarot cards how your boyfriend feels, how you feel your boyfriend feels, for example. Then show me how you feel. Show me how the two of you used to be together, and show me how it varies to how you are now, and show me how you want it to be in the future, and show me how what he said to you made you feel. So you have to select a card for all of these different things. You have to find the card that most pertains to the way you feel or to the way you view something, and that card has to describe it. So, you know, this is very complex work. This isn't going to take, you know, a matter of 5 minutes. This is where you really break it down. So you are using the cards, and as I said, this can be done when you're really, really experienced at tarot, or it can be done when you have no idea what any of the tarot cards mean. It doesn't matter. The fact that they're symbolic and they give you that symbolism and they give you those pictures that allow you to tap into them intuitively, even when you've never read a book about tarot in your life. Anybody can draw a picture with tarot. So it's about drawing a picture of that scene. Bardic technique speaks very much to this idea as well, and it's sort of in the idea, the family of this idea, if you like. Bardic technique is where we use tarot to tell a story, or where we draw tarot cards and then make a story out of those tarot cards. So this is going to be less about analysing yourself and delving into your own kind of mind with tarot, but it's going to be about allowing you to see where the possibilities could lie, or how far you could take your tarot study. So turn over a card, and if it begins with like the Two of Swords, you can decide that there's a beautiful princess who lives in a castle by the sea, and she has 2 swords in each of her hands, and each sword pertains to a suitor, a prince that she could potentially marry. But she's blindfolded, which means she can't see either of the princes, but she has to make a choice, but she doesn't know which choice she's making. The story could start as simply as that. Then go on to the next card, see where that story unfolds, see which suitor she chooses, where she goes from there. Is there an adventure? Is there an evil king? Does she need to escape a monster? The story can go anywhere. Bardic technique is incredible, and I think it's one of those things that, it's one of those things that really can allow you to open up the possibilities with tarot and show you how tarot is so open-ended, it really can go anywhere. Writing a letter with tarot is a good one that I've asked querents to do a few times when they felt as though they cannot express their feelings openly to the person they're unhappy with, or to the person they're angry with. Writing a letter with tarot, basically I'm asking the querent to imagine that they cannot write a letter with words, but that they have to send the person they're upset with, or the person they feel for, whoever it is, a letter made purely of tarot cards. So they're basically asking this other person to define how they feel through cards. So let's say that you're very upset with somebody right now and you can't express it and you don't really know how you feel about it, but you want to communicate it. Imagine that instead of sitting down and writing this person a letter, you have to send them some cards in an envelope, and they will have to kind of guess from these cards or assume from these cards how you feel. So you're going to be selecting cards that strongly tap into the way you feel. If you're upset and you feel isolated or disappointed, you're going to be putting things like the 5 of Cups in there. You know, if you feel tempted or a bit devilish, a bit mischievous, a bit like lying, you might put the devil in there. Try and describe how you're feeling for somebody else through the cards and see how that sort of goes for you. And the last thing I would say about reading your tarot cards for yourself is journaling is an absolutely intrinsic and very important tool, and it's something that I've said before and I'll definitely say again. It's probably like a little bit of a cliche, but if you are reading tarot cards for yourself, then the best thing that you can do for yourself is journal each time you do it. And it only has to be a few brief notes, it doesn't have to be anything complex, but it can kind of help you when you look back over the linear sort of time that's passed of you doing your cards. It can help you to see how you've done, what's gone on with it, whether or not you are being truly objective, whether or not you are allowing tarot to shake things up for you, or whether you're just kind of using it as a way to kind of comfort and placate yourself, but you're not really using it to take anything from, kind of thing. Doing tarot for yourself should be tough. It should be challenging. It should encourage you to look at things in a different light. You know, it should do those things for you. If it's not doing those things for you, and it's either just really frustrating you because you can't get the answer you want out of it, or it always makes you feel good and nice and fluffy and light because it always confirms exactly what you think and what you feel, then you probably need to shake things up. You probably need to use a few techniques that might encourage you to think outside the box and think about ways in which tarot could enable you to struggle to reach that next plateau, because that's what self-development's all about. And if tarot isn't challenging you in that way, then there are plenty of other ways that you can use the tool to begin to harmonise with it and to begin to see how it can make you grow as a person. Big fan of reading tarot for yourself, but you know, obviously objectivity can be an issue, so if you are having problems in that way, put some of these practices into play and see what happens.